Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Happy Pi Day. My name is Coni Arévalo. I am a research associate at Faunalytics, and I'm so excited to be here with you all today to talk about our latest study, bringing back former vegans and vegetarians and obstacle analysis. So let's dive right in. All right, first I'm going to talk a little bit of background just to get us set up to talk about this study. And the first thing you need to keep in mind is that not everyone who switches to a plant-based diet is going to maintain it long-term. In fact, there was a Faunalytics study that came out in 2014 that found that the number of people who have tried a vegan or a vegetarian diet far surpasses the number of people that are currently on a vegan or vegetarian diet in the US. Now, the good news is that that same study also showed that former vegans and vegetarians consume less animal products than the general US population. So we can essentially consider this group of people to be reducitarians. And what this means for advocates is that former vegans and vegetarians could be really good targets for diet campaigns. These are people that are essentially already halfway there. They're already eating less meat, less animal products than most people, and they already have some experience with plant-based diets under their belt. So considering this, the objective of this study was to understand the obstacles faced by people who once pursued a vegan or vegetarian diet and what they would need to resume being vegan or vegetarian. And we wanted to consider people's reasons for abandoning their diets in their own words. And I'll explain what I mean by that in just a minute. But basically, we wanted to find the best ways to help people stick to their plant-based diets and also help advocates bring back some of those people who quit their vegan or vegetarian diets over the years. So to do this, we used data from two previous Faunalytics studies. The first is our longitudinal study of new vegans and vegetarians, which came out in 2021. And if you're not that familiar with this study, we followed participants over a 6-month period as they transitioned to veganism or vegetarianism. And so for this study, we used data from participants who said that they quit their diet at some point during that period. And now the other study whose data we used was Faunalytics study of current and former vegetarians and vegans, which was conducted in 2014. And again, we considered that data from people who said that they were either former vegetarian or a former vegan. So what we did was we looked at people's responses to open-ended survey questions that had to do with the difficulties that they faced on their veg diets and what they would need to reach their original veg goal. And so by looking at their written out responses, we were considering their own words. And we did what we call a thematic analysis, where we essentially look for common themes that had to do with the obstacles that they faced and any requirements they would have to someday come back to a veg diet. Now let's get into the good stuff, the results. So we found 8 major themes that have to do with the obstacles that people faced on their veg diets. The most commonly mentioned were dissatisfaction with vegan and vegetarian food, which was mentioned by almost half of our participants, by 47% of them. And the main issues here were related to people being generally unhappy with the food that they were eating. So a lot of them experienced cravings for meat or other animal products like cheese was mentioned a lot. People becoming bored with the food they were eating. Some people mentioned feeling hungry a lot of the time, and some people just didn't like the taste of the food. Now, another issue we saw within this dissatisfaction with food theme was a lack of vegan or vegetarian knowledge. And what I mean by that is that there seemed to be some uncertainty about food preparation, particularly plant-based food, and some uncertainty about the presence of additives, GMOs, and even maybe hidden animal products in plant-based food. So a good bit of uncertainty there. Now, after dissatisfaction with veg food, health management issues were the second most commonly mentioned problems. And these were an issue for about 30% of our participants. And the most common issues here had to do with nutrient intake. So people not being sure if they were getting enough iron, enough protein, or other nutrients. Some people said that they felt a bit unhealthy or just unwell. Some people had difficulty managing a previous health condition or chronic condition with a plant-based diet. And some people mentioned that they got pregnant, and that was the reason that they went off their diet. Now, also within this category was just people not seeing expected health benefits. So a lot of people will go veg for health reasons. And if they're not seeing an improvement in their health, such as weight loss, then a lot of times they will abandon the diet. Now, after this, we have accessibility challenges, which was a problem for about a quarter of our participants. And this was a problem for former vegans and vegetarians in 2014, as well as in 2019, 2020. So although there are more plant-based options in the market, it does not mean that these are accessible to all people. And this is something that we saw a lot. The main issues that we saw under accessibility challenges had to do with limited access to plant-based options in restaurants, in grocery stores, or wherever people are getting their food. And a lot of people didn't even have a nearby grocery store to go to. So we can actually see some examples of that in these quotes. The first says, "It was most difficult when my family and I went out to eat because my options were very limited." And we have a second quote that says, "Hard to find ingredients I needed to prepare or make things, no health stores or grocery stores with vegan ingredients, making it very difficult to try new or different recipes." So we really see that lack of access to plant-based foods being illustrated here. Now, another issue that came up with accessibility challenges was what we called meal complexity. And what I mean by that is that, especially for people who lead very busy lives, they found that shopping for and planning and cooking plant-based meals, a lot of the time just involved too much effort and too much time that they didn't have. So that made it really difficult to continue a plant-based diet long-term. Now, after accessibility challenges, we saw that about 20% of participants had lost motivation while they tried to transition to a veg diet. And a lot of people also mentioned a lack of willpower. So they would mention needing more willpower to resist the urge of eating meat or other animal products. Now, for 15% of our participants, social struggles were a big thing. A lot of these people lived with loved ones, like their parents, their children, partner, sometimes roommates, people who a lot of times made it difficult to maintain a veg diet long term. So if we look at this first quote here, it says, "My family needs full nutrition." Now, this person was probably talking about children that they need to feed, and they want to give them a very nutritious diet, of course. And maybe they felt that they weren't getting that from a veg diet. So the needs of their loved ones would take precedence over their desire to pursue a veg diet in this case. Now, another issue that was commonly faced was a lack of support, either from loved ones or from society in general. Like this person here who said, "My support circle is very small, and I find it difficult to meet others with similar goals that could be available to help me as needed." Another issue was difficulty with social events. So a lot of people struggled when going out with friends, going to parties, dinner events, things like that. Like this person here who felt left out at parties and social gatherings. And then some people faced social pressure in general. So they felt the need to eat what others were eating, or they just didn't really feel accepted by society. Now, 10% of our participants faced financial issues. And most of these people mentioned experiencing a difficult financial situation. So maybe they lost their job, their income decreased for some reason, maybe they had more children, whatever the reason was, they were under a financially difficult situation. And a lot of these people also mentioned the cost of plant-based food just being too high. So for a lot of people, their financial situation would have to improve for them to be able to resume a veg diet at some point. And we see that exemplified here, where this person said, "Cost is the biggest factor. I eat what I can afford." And this was a really common sentiment. We heard this from a lot of people. Okay, so we have two other themes here. We got temporary vegans and vegetarians. These are people who outright said that they always meant for their diet to be temporary. Or it could have been someone who recognized that they often switch between a veg diet and an omnivorous diet. And then the people that fall under the other obstacles that are just other obstacles that didn't really fit any of these other themes. Now, we did find a ninth theme that's actually not shown here, and it's not shown because it's not really an obstacle. It's quite the opposite. It's what we called the bright side of vegan and vegetarian diets. And these were people who were mentioning a very positive experience with their veg diet. They often said that they felt healthy, that they really enjoyed the taste of plant-based food, and some of them also mentioned wanting to someday come back to a plant-based diet. So we did look at the relationships between different obstacles. Sorry, excuse me. We looked at the relationship between different obstacles and certain demographics. And we did find really interesting results when it came to the age at which people first adopted their veg diet. So we actually found that these obstacles diminish with age. So the younger people were when they adopted a veg diet, we found that the more difficulty they had managing their health, the more uncertain they were about food preparation, and they were more concerned about GMOs and additives in their food. And they faced more obstacles that had to do with their loved ones, like their family, their partners, roommates, people that they lived with. Now, for the most part, we saw that these obstacles actually improved in people who adopted a veg diet after the age of 35. And in fact, we found that the older people were when they adopted a veg diet, the more positive their experience was. So if they adopted a veg diet after 35, they often said that they enjoyed their diet more, that they really liked the taste of plant-based food, and that they would maybe want to come back to a veg diet again. Now, getting into the requirements to resume a veg diet. As you may remember, dissatisfaction with vegan and vegetarian food was the most commonly mentioned obstacle. But this was not the case when it came to the requirements that people had to return to a veg diet. Instead, we saw that improved accessibility was the #1 requirement that was mentioned by people, and that was mentioned by about 30% of participants. So people want to see more plant-based foods available to them. So in their restaurants, in their grocery stores, sometimes it means even having a grocery store nearby. And for those people leading really busy lives, people with children who don't really have that much time, it's really important to have more access to fast and easy options. So that means more plant-based foods in fast food restaurants and ready to eat food in grocery stores. Now, for 15% of people, motivation and willpower were requirements to someday come back to a veg diet. For another 15% of people, it was satisfaction with food and veg knowledge. So these people want to see tastier plant-based options, and they want to have access to simple and tasty recipes. So recipes did come up a lot as a requirement to resume a veg diet. For 14% of participants, they would need a better support system. So that can come from their loved ones. And if not from their loved ones, then some sort of community that they can get that support from. For 13% of our participants, financial stability was a big thing. So they would need to be in a financially stable place to be able to come back to a veg diet, or they would need to see the price of plant-based food go down so that they could afford it. Then for 11% of our participants, they mentioned better health management. So these people want more information as to the nutrients that they should be consuming and where to find them. A lot of them need access to a doctor, and most of them just want general information on how to stay healthy on a veg diet. Now, there were some people that were unsure of their requirements. Some people mentioned no requirements or just said that they have no requirements. Again, we saw temporary vegans and vegetarians come into play, and there were other requirements that didn't fit any of these themes. Now, more often than not, people have more than one need that has to be met, and these needs usually span multiple themes, which we can see in this quote right here. So this person said that they need a job, they need time to research how to prepare vegan foods that aren't just salad, and they need access to a doctor. So we see that financial piece come into play here, where they say that they would need a job, they need time, so that's that accessibility piece. We see that satisfaction with food piece, right? They want more than just salads. And we see that health piece come into play again because they need access to a doctor. So we really need to consider how people have often very complex needs, and it's not a matter of just solving one issue and they're good to go. We really need to consider the complex situation of each person. Okay, so finally, I'm going to go over some recommendations for advocates. The first is that motivation and resources are key to bringing back laxed vegans and vegetarians. So motivation can come in the form of animal welfare, health, environment, whatever it may be. Motivation is key to help someone stay on that path towards veganism and vegetarianism. And resources, we saw the really important ones are simple, fast, tasty, and nutritious recipes, and also providing health information. So you can recommend that they go to regular checkups if they have access to a doctor. Excuse me. And if they don't have access to a doctor, see if you can provide some general guidelines for staying healthy on a veg diet, maybe provide some nutrient information. Okay, so we also recommend that you encourage the buddy system. So as we saw, support from loved ones is really important. It can definitely help you stay on the path towards veganism and vegetarianism if you have that support. So recommend that they try going vegan or vegetarian with someone close to them. It can be a partner, a friend, a sibling, whoever they want. But if they don't have anyone to go veg with, you can suggest online or local communities or events for them to check out. Now, we also recommend that you advocate for better access to plant-based foods and for plant-based agriculture to be subsidized more. So we saw that accessibility challenges were a big thing, and they were the biggest requirement, right? So increasing plant-based options in grocery stores and food banks and restaurants, food kitchens, wherever people are getting their food is really important. Now, there are more plant-based options in the market now than there were years ago, but it does not mean that they are accessible to everyone, and that's what we need to be working on. And we can also lobby for governments to support and to subsidize plant-based agriculture more than animal agriculture so that we can hopefully bring down the price of plant-based foods so that those people who said that their biggest obstacle was the cost of plant-based food being too high, those people could maybe go back to being veg. And finally, we recommend that you target more diet campaigns to women over 35 years of age. So as we saw, people who went veg after 35 had fewer obstacles and they enjoyed their diets more. They generally were more confident in the kitchen. They were less likely to have to cook for children, for roommates, and they might just benefit more from a plant-based diet from a health perspective. And women in particular seemed to have a more positive experience with veg diets than men. So targeting more women over 35 may be a good strategy. Okay, so that's everything I have today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm open to any questions you might have. Of course, please check out our full report on our website, and the link is right there if you want to check that out. Let's see if we have any questions. Okay, it looks like we don't have any questions in the chat. So if you think of any questions later, please feel free to drop them in the comments. You can email us at info@faunalytics.org, and I will be sure to get back to you soon with an answer. And thank you again so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure talking about this study. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and eat lots of pie. Thank you.